The next piece on my pottery challenge that was submitted to me by my students is a wheel-thrown bowl with an altered rim in somewhat of a triangular shape. This is a piece that was submitted to me by two students, Jay and Ananya. So this is the piece that I'm going to attempt to make. Let's go. As I begin, I have to place my ball of clay in the middle of my bat, working to ensure that it's stuck. I set the wheel to full speed. Both of my hands are wet as I do this, and I push downward so that I can ensure that the clay is properly stuck to the bat. Now I begin the coning and subsequent centering process, squeezing inward and upward to create a cone shape. A little bit of water as I push downward to center the clay back on the bat, into the middle of the bat. So as I push that down, I'm maintaining control of the outward shape and ultimately thickness of my pot. So as I center it, I want to think about the shape and the height of the vessel that I'm going to make. This looks like it's going to be a pretty good size and shape. So if I'm good with that process that I just went through for coning and centering, I did that at full speed. Now I'm going to slow it down to a kind of a slow to medium. I'm visualizing the center of my piece of clay, and when I find that, I slowly push downward to create an opening in the center of the clay. This process is called holing out. So as I hole it out, I'm going to work to set the depth of the pot, also known as the thickness of the pot. The thickness of the pot is determined by using a needle tool. When I do that, I'm going to stop the wheel. I'm going to stick my needle in the middle, my finger against it, and that little gap there, that's what tells me how thick the bottom of my pot is. My goal is about 3/8 of an inch. So I don't want to go any thinner than that because then the pot gets too fragile. So as I've set that thickness, now I go back to the next step, and this is called opening. It's important at this point to make sure that your wheel speed is again slow to medium. And here, just like I used my fingers on my left hand to hole out the clay to create that center opening, now I'm using those same two fingers to slowly and gently push the clay outward towards the palm of my right hand. As I do this, I work to ensure that my right hand is not moving. And ultimately what's happening is the clay down at the bottom, where I've been pushing, the clay wall is a little thinner down here. And the clay, as I pull it, that's the next movement, I'm going to make a groove. My right hand doing most of the work. My left hand as a guide, I'm going to start pulling that wall upwards. As I pull, I'm going to come back and compress. I'm getting rid of some of the loose clay. And make another groove. Slowly pull upwards. The pulling process helps you make the most out of a piece of clay that you're working with. And it does that by making your pot taller and thinning out the wall. So ultimately the pulling process is there to thin out your wall and give you the desired thickness of your wall. So we can always shape the clay, we can always make the pot wider or narrower, which will change the diameter and the height. But once we have the wall pulled to the desired thickness, we want to stop the pulling process. The pulling process happens depending upon the amount of clay that you're working with. Sometimes you can get away with 3 pulls. Sometimes it takes 5 or 6 pulls. Okay, so I've achieved a pretty decent thickness in my wall and a pretty good depth to my overall pot. So what I need to look at next is if I go back to the picture and look, as I look at the picture, I can see that the pot has a little bit of a belly in the middle. So I'm going to work to create the belly, and then I'm going to bring the rim back in, and then I'm going to shape the rim into a triangular wall. So this process of shaping now is done. You have a couple of fingers on the outside that I'm going to use to create the belly, and then I have a couple fingers on the inside that are going to push outward on the wall of clay. To create the belly. And as I did that, you saw that my upper finger kept the rim from moving outward. And now what I want to be able to do is with a process called collaring, I'm going to gently squeeze on that top area, the collar of the vessel. And I'm going to gently squeeze and move inward. I want to make sure that as I'm doing so, that my fingers that are doing this collaring are properly lubricated so that the clay just kind of glides through. And I'm going to do this until I think that my upper wall kind of matches the angle that I want it to have. Since I'm pretty close, what I'm going to do now is use one finger in and one finger out. And I'm going to gently tighten up that shape. Okay. So anytime you have a hand or finger or a tool that's contacting the clay, it's nice if you can have a little bit of water there for lubrication. You don't want to use too much. So, but what I'm also going to do is I'm going to push out the bottom a little bit more. dry off the outside of the pot a little bit. The shape's looking pretty good. I noticed here that the rim has a little bit of a wobble to it. So to give it a little bit of refinement, I want to use my needle tool and just kind of like I'm shooting pool, I want to push that needle tool through the clay, through the rim, and very gently trim off that excess. So now my last step, if I'm satisfied with my overall shape, I need to make something of a triangle. So I need 3 points of contact. So I'm going to take a look at those each way. It worked to use 2 hands. And then I can go back and refine it a little bit. Back with my sponge and touch up the rim a little bit. Clean up those finger marks a little. And I'll be able to refine it a little bit more as it dries. What I also want to do is, before I decide that I'm done, is I want to take a wood modeling tool. First off, I'm going to wipe off some excess water out here. Use my wood modeling tool. And I'm going to clean up the clay here at the base of my pot. And give it a little beveled edge down there at the bottom. This process gives the pot a little bit nicer finish. And when it comes to glazing, I have a ready-made mark or indication because of that beveled edge. So I think I have everything good to go now. So I'm going to remove the bat from the wheel head. I'll show you the pot. So there you can see the triangular rim, the belly of the pot, a little bit of beveled edge. So Jay and Ananya, I hope you like the pot that I made as a challenge. Thanks for submitting it.